World War I was a global war that lasted from 1914 to 1918. It was primarily fought in Europe, but it also involved many other countries around the world. The war began with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary by a Serbian nationalist in June 1914. This event triggered a chain of alliances and military mobilizations that quickly drew many other countries into the conflict. The major powers involved in the war were the Allied powers, led by France, the United Kingdom, and Russia, and the Central Powers, led by Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. The war was fought on several fronts, with major battles taking place in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Some of the most significant events of the war included the Battle of the Somme, the Battle of Verdun, and the Gallipoli Campaign. The war also saw the use of new technologies and tactics, including machine guns, tanks, and chemical weapons. The war had a devastating impact on the countries and people involved. It resulted in the deaths of millions of soldiers and civilians, as well as significant economic and social disruptions. The Treaty of Versailles, which ended the war, imposed heavy reparations on Germany and is often cited as a contributing factor to the outbreak of World War II. Overall, World War I marked a turning point in world history and had a profound impact on the 20th century. The Gallipoli Campaign, also known as the Dardanelles Campaign, was a military operation during World War I in which Allied forces, primarily British and French, attempted to capture the Ottoman capital of Constantinople, now Istanbul, by securing the Dardanelles Strait. The campaign began on April 25, 1915, with a landing of Australian and New Zealand Army Corps (ANZAC) troops on the Gallipoli Peninsula, followed by British and French landings. The initial landing was met with fierce resistance from Ottoman forces, resulting in heavy casualties on both sides. The ANZAC troops in particular suffered heavily, with many soldiers pinned down on the beaches and unable to advance inland. Despite repeated attempts to break through the Ottoman defenses, the Allies were unable to make significant progress and the campaign descended into a stalemate. Throughout the summer of 1915, the fighting continued, with both sides suffering heavy losses from disease and combat. In August, the Allies attempted a major offensive, but it was quickly repulsed by the Ottomans, leading to further casualties. By the end of the year, the Allies had realized that the campaign was a failure and began preparations to withdraw. The last Allied troops left the Gallipoli Peninsula on January 9, 1916. The campaign had cost the Allies approximately 141,000 casualties, including over 44,000 dead, while Ottoman casualties are estimated at around 250,000. The Gallipoli Campaign was a significant event in the First World War, with far-reaching consequences. It was a major setback for the Allies, particularly the British, and led to the resignation of the British First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill. The campaign also helped to solidify Turkish national identity and paved the way for the rise of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, who would later become the founder and first president of modern Turkey. The Battle of the Somme was a major offensive launched by the British and French armies against the German army on the Western Front during World War I. The battle took place between July 1 and November 18, 1916, and was one of the bloodiest battles in human history, resulting in over 1 million casualties. The battle began with a massive artillery barrage by the British that was intended to destroy the German trenches and wire, but it failed to do so. When the British soldiers went over the top to advance across no man's land and attack the German positions, they were met with heavy machine gun fire and suffered heavy losses. Despite these setbacks, the battle continued for several months, with the British and French making some gains but also suffering heavy losses. The battle eventually ended in a stalemate, with both sides having suffered huge losses. The Battle of the Somme had a profound impact on the war and on British society. It was the first major engagement for the new army, which had been formed in response to the need for more troops. The losses suffered during the battle had a significant impact on the British public, who were shocked by the scale of the carnage. Today, the Battle of the Somme is remembered as one of the most significant events of World War I, and it is widely commemorated in the UK and other countries that fought in the war. The Battle of Verdun was one of the largest and deadliest battles of World War I, fought between the German and French armies from February to December 1916. Here's a brief summary of the battle. Background. After the failure of the German Schlieffen Plan, which aimed to quickly defeat France, the war on the Western Front turned into a stalemate of trench warfare. In order to break the stalemate, the Germans planned to attack and bleed the French army dry at Verdun, a key fortress town. The French were determined to hold Verdun at all costs, and the stage was set for one of the bloodiest battles in human history. The battle. On February 21, 1916, the German army launched a massive artillery bombardment on the French lines at Verdun, followed by a ground assault by infantry troops. The French defenders were heavily outnumbered and outgunned, but they managed to hold their ground. The Germans then shifted to a strategy of attrition, continuously bombarding the French lines with artillery, and launching small-scale attacks to wear down the defenders. Over the course of the battle, the Germans made significant gains, but the French managed to hold on to the key fortresses of Douaumont and Vaux. The battle also saw the first large-scale use of flamethrowers by both sides, as well as the deployment of a large number of artillery guns. Aftermath. The Battle of Verdun lasted for 10 months and resulted in an estimated 700,000 to 1 million casualties on both sides. The battlefield was a wasteland of shell craters and barbed wire, and the area remained a deadly no-man's land for years after the war. The battle did not lead to a breakthrough for either side, and the war continued for 2 more years until the armistice of November 11, 1918.